Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Oh, it's nice to see some people returning. So it's 3 o'clock. I think we'll get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us to our third of 4 Essential Skills for Job Seeker webinars. We're really excited to be here today and to start to talk about networking. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. We do have more than 200 people registered for the webinar, so everyone is on mute, but there are lots of ways for you to engage today. We'll have some polls, and if you look along the bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. Any questions you have throughout the webinar, if you can drop them into the Q&A, we will dedicate about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the webinar to go through those questions. If you have something that you need help with a little bit more urgently throughout the webinar, then you put that in the chat. So if you're having trouble with sound, or if you have any accessibility support that you could use from us, please let us know through the chat. And during the Q&A, if you would like to have yourself unmuted so that you can make some contribution, just press the raise hand and we can unmute you. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared on the PLT Canada website in the future. It will also be emailed to each one of you who have registered. So we'll get started. The first thing that we're going to do is a little bit of a demographic poll, and this poll is anonymous. If you can go ahead and launch that. It just helps us to ensure that we continue to create services and products to best meet our audience. So just a few minutes and you can click all that apply.
So I can see lots of people voting, which is great.
Great. And this information is just purely internal. As I said, we just really do value knowing who our audience is to make sure that we are meeting those needs appropriately. So I think that's good, Hannah. So thank you so much. So my name is Tara Topping, and I am the Manager of Career Education with Project Learning Tree Canada. We are an initiative of SFI, which is Sustainable Forestry Initiative. And we strive for a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests. At PLT Canada, we are committed to engaging youth in green career pathways, starting all the way through engagement and inspiration in environmental education, and then continuing on and engaging youth green career pathways through some of the services like we have with this webinar today to make sure that youth have the skills and access to green careers of their dreams. So since 2018, we've placed over 2,500 youth in green jobs across 12 provinces and territories by supporting over 200 employers in the Sustainable Forestry Initiative and Canadian Parks Council networks. In addition to job placements, we provide opportunities for youth to attend networking events and training workshops, and also offer a wide variety of career resources via our website. This year, we launched a mentorship program that connects youth 18 to 30 with professionals in the forest and conservation sector. And we're pretty excited that we are launching our next cohort at the end of October, and registration is open currently on our website. I know lots of you have already registered. I'll let Maria put that into the chat box. Also coming up on October 1st, I'm excited to announce that we'll be able to sponsor over 100 youth participants in 2 binational e-summits, both of which will be excellent networking opportunities. I'm not disclosed to actually say what the 2 events will be yet, but if you register for our newsletter on our website, you will be kept in the loop, and it will be a contest or first come, first serve to participate in those events. So that's really exciting. And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Maria before we get started.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I would like to begin by acknowledging that PLT Canada's office is located within the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I would also like to acknowledge that we are joined by folks from across Canada that are each in their own territory of Indigenous peoples of Canada. I encourage you to check out the resource in the chat box where you can learn a little bit more about Indigenous territories and languages. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. So I'm going to now pass it over to our real expert today, who's Sarah Casorso. She's from Eco Canada, and she has her Bachelor of Arts from the University of British Columbia and a certificate in HR management from the University of Calgary. She manages Eco Canada's HR and administration departments, and she has over 10 years of experience working in human resources and recruiting for environmental organizations. So over to you, Sarah.
Great. Thanks very much, Tara, and good afternoon to everybody online today. Eco Canada is partnering with Project Learning Tree Canada to bring you a series of 4 webinars, and this series is really designed to help you develop the tools and techniques that will assist you in performing an effective job search in the Canadian green sector. So today is our 3rd webinar in the series, where we're going to cover how to make meaningful connections. So these are networking strategies for environmental professionals. Our final webinar will be on September 24th, and we're finishing the series off by looking at how you can ace your interviews. So the skills and techniques that you need to help secure the job of your dreams. As a job seeker, searching for a job can definitely be overwhelming, but our Essential Skills for Job Seekers webinar series is breaking down those job search into manageable pieces. So recordings for all of these webinars are available on the PLT website. Before we start, I always like to take a look at the intended learning outcomes for today's webinar. So today at the end, you should know more about why networking is important, how to create a networking strategy, the do's and the don'ts of networking, and how to carry out an informational interview. We'll also provide you with some resources at the end to help you use and structure your networking strategy. All right. So before we start, I was hoping to do a quick poll to find out what you already know about networking. So the question I'm posing to the audience is, on average, what percentage of jobs are filled through networking? Just give you a couple seconds, 20-ish seconds to get your answers in there. Looks like the majority of you are saying 85%. So yeah, according to different sort of searches that we've put out there and research that we've done, it's approximately 85% of positions are filled by networking. So now that we've impressed you with the importance of networking, let's talk about what it is and how to make sure you're doing it effectively. A lot of job seekers often view networking with, reservation or even fear. The idea of circulating and making small talk with a group of complete strangers can be really intimidating. So if you're one of those people, like I am, don't worry, you're not alone. Networking is all about building relationships or building a community of contacts. So there's lots of different ways that you can network, both face-to-face and now obviously virtually. Having a targeted strategy can really help you focus on making those meaningful connections and get ahead in your career. So if you want to grow your career, then you need to understand the importance of building a strong professional network. Building and managing your network can really help you as a job seeker in a lot of ways. So things like helping attract future opportunities. So you never know when somebody in your own network might be able to assist you in finding a job. It can also help create a safety net for the times like many of you might find yourself in now, where you're out of work. And then it can help also expand your knowledge and perspectives of different careers and employers. And then it also establishes a network of experience that you can call upon. So building a network is one of the most important things you can do to help your job search. If you're just starting out in your career, you probably don't know where to begin. So the first step is to identify your current network. Because even if you're a new graduate, you already are a part of a network. So your network can be made up of almost anyone that you've ever met, as long as they know who you are. You have to be able to connect the dots, right? It has to be those meaningful connections and somebody that you would be able to connect with and remember where you've met them and that kind of thing. So each of your contacts can lead to a new one. So taking the time to map out your existing network can really help create a baseline and identify sort of any areas where you could grow. So here's some suggestions of what you could include to start mapping out your own network. So you'd be looking at current or former coworkers, fellow members of professional associations, friends and family, former professors and instructors, and then former classmates. And then of course you would have professional contacts that fall outside of these groups, but these are just giving you some suggestions of places to start. People on this call today could become part of your network. So now that we've identified your network, it's time to start growing it. And you might be asking, how do I expand my network? We don't have time or all the time, right now to go to coffee meeting after coffee meeting or attend all the expensive conferences that are out there, especially now with COVID. There are challenges with that as well. So the good news is that there are simple ways that you can start to grow your professional network. So some suggestions that we have for you would be to join a club or an alumni group. So you're finding common ground with these groups or clubs, like-minded individuals, people who have graduated from the same program as you. You might have an association that you wanted to be a part of. You can also use things like LinkedIn. So if you were part of the webinar series previously, I do chat a lot about the importance of LinkedIn. So just things like 15 minutes a day to spend on social media networking. So reaching out to contacts, asking about their work, or checking out a webinar to learn more about different opportunities that are out there. There's also staying up to date in your field of interest. So as you start networking more, it's important to do your homework by staying on top of what's going on in the industry. So reading the news, subscribing to daily newsletters, or attending webinars. By staying up to date on what's going on in your field, you'll be able to break the ice easier when you're meeting new contacts and having those conversations. And then ask for help. So you may be building a network from scratch, but that doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of the connections you already have. You might want to ask a relative, a friend, a coworker, if they can introduce you to somebody who you would really like to connect with. So you might be worried about putting them on the spot, but don't hold back. Most people are really eager to help others. And then you can attend relevant events. So this could be in person, or right now it's virtual, but there are things like speed networking or virtual meetups. Those all exist, and you can definitely take advantage of those things. And then volunteering. Volunteering is another great way to meet new people and to build on your experience. So not many people love networking. It's a lot of the extroverts out there that do, but for most of us, it can feel intimidating and scary. And so there's no right or wrong way to network. It can be done in a large group, small groups, one-on-one, or online. But just making sure that you have a strategy keeps you focused for setting goals and staying on track. So setting goals is a simple tool that you can use to help make the most of your networking opportunities. They can be both short and long-term, and you may have a specific goal for an event that you attend. So when you're setting these goals, you want to try and make them measurable. This makes it easy for you to quantify and make sure that you stay on track. And it can be difficult for broader overarching goals. So, breaking them down into sub-goals is much easier. So for example, if your overall goal is to expand your network because you're looking for a new role, you could split this into smaller goals, such as adding 5 LinkedIn contacts a month, or having 2 informational interviews in a month. The important thing to remember is that goal setting can be an important tool to help motivate you and break down networking into the smaller tasks. So I definitely recommend everybody try that. One element of networking that can be difficult is keeping track of everyone that you've spoken with. So if you're attending lots of events and sending lots of emails or connection requests, it can definitely be difficult to remember who you spoke to, what you talked about, and if there was any outcome from that. So having a networking tracker can really help you manage this, and it makes it so much easier later on when you need to reach out to someone. There's lots of templates that already exist out there. If you just use Google, you would put in networking tracker, for example. But on this screen, we've got it from Office 365. So you can, of course, create your own, but the important thing that you're going to want to track would be obviously the person's name, the company for which they're working for, and their job title, where you met. So this is important for when you follow up, because you can personalize the message. It was nice to meet you at the PLT Green Jobs event last year, for example. You want a note section too, so including things that you want to remember about this contact. So maybe what you talked about, the mutual interests you may have, or what you want to reach out to them in the future about. And then some fields to track your follow-up and interactions, so dates, notes from conversations, that kind of thing. There are a number of you, and I'll just put this out there, that have reached out to me on LinkedIn and have included in the connection requests, who you are and that you met me through this these webinar series, and that's great. That's an excellent start to networking online. So one important way to build your network is to attend relevant industry events and meet people face to face. And this can be one of the more intimidating experiences for job seekers. And so we're just going to share some do's and don'ts to tackle the face-to-face networking opportunities. So the do's would be, bring along business cards. You're going to want to offer help or advice. You're going to want to prepare questions that you want to ask people so that you're not on the spot. You do your research before the event and try to find out who's going to be there, who you might meet, people's names if possible. And when people introduce themselves, remember that so that it shows that you're listening. And things like smiling, it's people pick up on body language, so smiling is a great way to be inviting and welcoming. And then the don'ts would be, don't just talk to one person. So don't be afraid to ask lots of questions or approach new people. A lot of people are out there nervous too. They're there for the same reasons as you are. So I think when you keep that in mind, it makes it a little bit easier. And then, if there's things like alcohol or food, those types of things, you just want to do everything in moderation so that you're still professional and at your best. And then don't be on your phone staring at it or monopolizing conversations. That's not ever a good thing either. So you want to be a good listener and practice reinforcing your listening skills. So an example of how you might get ready for a face-to-face event would be by doing your preparations. So you would see if you can find an attendee list. You would research some of the companies that will be there, and from that you would prepare some questions that you could ask the people. You'd want to make sure that you have business cards ready, and as a new graduate you may not have business cards, but it could be worth getting some printed for face-to-face type events. Just with your name, your contact information, that's fine. You don't have to have a fancy title or anything like that, especially if you're looking for a new role. And then during the event, your interaction can include, obviously you're going to want to make sure you've got your name tag on so that people know who you are. And then you're going to introduce yourself and have a elevator pitch. That's what we call it. And so then, maybe you've got a few prepared questions. So this would be your opportunity to ask those. And then after a few minutes, you thank people for their time and then ask if you can have their business card or follow up with them, and then smile and move on. So, you know, every interaction will be important, but it's good to keep them to the point and make the most out of the opportunity that's in front of you. After the event is over, it's really important to follow up, and we'll cover this a little bit later on in the webinar today. So now I'm going to talk about online networking. It's not new, it's been around for a while, and sites like LinkedIn make it really easy, but obviously online networking is even more important right now with COVID-19, which makes face-to-face events difficult or if not impossible. So there are a lot of different benefits to networking online. With online networking, you have a wider reach than you would at an in-person event. So people from all over the world can meet up in a professional, like-minded group, giving you the opportunity to meet and network with people in the field that you might never have met otherwise. So LinkedIn definitely is the go-to site for career-related networking. So it's important to have a strong profile, make sure that you are active on there, and we'll go into a few more tips later on as well. And then there's joining social media groups and chats dedicated to your area of interest. So there's groups again on LinkedIn, and chats even exist on Twitter. So you can also move beyond LinkedIn. Lots of companies and groups are exploring different ways to network virtually using platforms such as Zoom to help people connect. And at Eco Canada, we've hosted a couple of virtual networking sessions over the past few months, and those have been a really great way to connect with new people. So here are a few things that you can do to help your online networking have more impact. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, always personalize your connection requests. You're a lot more likely to have someone accept your request if you send them a personalized message, with why you want to connect, that kind of thing. A lot of people don't accept requests that aren't personalized. And then, excuse me, quality over quantity. So the goal shouldn't be to get like as many as possible. You want to make meaningful connections. So don't just send as many requests as possible. Do your research and make connections that matter. And then again, join those industry related groups. So the ones that are going to help you connect with like-minded individuals, and be active and relevant. So, posting professional content can really help your visibility. And don't forget your manners. So I've read that it takes around 7 seconds for a person to form a first impression. And this is still true when you're networking online. So, even if your connection is just reading words on screen, they're going to form an opinion of you. So remember to be polite, courteous, and professional. Oops, sorry, So now we're going to take a quick break to ask you all what one thing you want to go this week to kickstart your networking. So we'll give you 20 seconds or so to put your answer in the chat box. So think about what we've talked about. Will you be getting organized with a tracker, setting goals, or working on your online networking? I'm having trouble seeing what everybody's saying.
So lots of answers coming in. Someone saying they're going to join LinkedIn, upgrade their LinkedIn profile, which is great. Joining industry-related groups too. And someone's going to map out their current network so that they've got that starting point. Setting goals, and just loads of ideas from everybody keen to get started with their networking.
All right, awesome. So it's great to see everybody responding there, and maybe take a look what other people are saying to get some ideas. So now I'm going to move on to some tips to strengthen your networking game. So the elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is a really important tool to help you create your personal brand. and communicate to new contacts and potential employers who you are, and what you have to offer. So it's quick, it's a personal selling statement. It serves as the foundation for cover letters, email introductions, meeting employers at career fairs, and other more informal social settings. It should be short, succinct, so 30 or 60 seconds, and it should tell someone who you are and why they should hire you. So how do you start to build your elevator pitch? There's some key pieces of info that you would want to include. So things like who you are, so your name, so they know who they're talking to, what you do. So you could include your most relevant education or experience. Are you a recent grad? What's your current job title? What you want. So are you looking for a new role in a specific field? You want to include some information about why and what you have to offer. And then the call to action. So do you want to exchange business cards? Do you want to set up a follow-up meeting? You want to make sure that you're including it at the end of your pitch. But remember, you're not writing War and Peace, so short and to the point is always best. So now we're going to hear two different elevator pitches, and I want to ask the audience here what you think, which one you think is better and why. So I'm going to ask my two lovely co-presenters, Tara from PLT Canada and Hannah from ECO, to read out one each, and then we'll use the chat box again to let us know which one you think is better and why.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm job seeker number one. I'm a job seeker and I really need to find a job. Do you have a job for me? Please tell me, people tell me all the time that I have great skills and I think that would be really awesome at your company. I actually applied for a job at your company and I've heard nothing back. Is there anything that you can do to help me?
And I'm job seeker number two. My name is Susan Example. I recently graduated from college with a degree in conservation biology. During my co-op placement with Ducks Unlimited, I managed a monthly newsletter, which ignited my passion for communicating and educating the public on conservation issues. I'm looking for a job that will put my technical skills and conservation knowledge to work. I would love to exchange business cards.
So we're launching a poll right now. If you guys can vote which you think is the best elevator pitch.
And feel free to also use the chat if you want to add more qualitative information. I see some people doing that already.
We'll just give it another 5 seconds or so, and we'll see what people think.
Yeah, so that's great. It's like 98% there say job seeker. Susan Example, I believe her name is. So the first one that Hannah did was, the bad elevator pitch. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't tell us what they did, what their qualifications were, or what they have to offer. So it sounded a little desperate, which you obviously would want to try to avoid when you're communicating with new prospects. So great job, and thanks for your participation, everybody. So as a new graduate, you may be struggling to find ways to start building your network. And a great way to start this is to conduct information interviews. So people are usually eager to help new graduates. It's a great idea to reach out to people in the industry you're interested in and ask them for 15, 30 minutes of their time to, if you could, grab a coffee or connect over Zoom or Messenger, whatever that looks like. So this is your opportunity to ask lots of questions, take notes, and get some advice. But it's also important to remember that the goal of these informational interviews is not to get a job, but it's to listen to the other person and build upon your network. So I've often had people reach out to me and just want to sort of pick my brain for 15 or so minutes. And I think that's a really great way to network and stand out above other people who are maybe your competition for jobs or career progression. So this slide, we're going to show some examples of questions you could ask at an informational interview. So they're all focused on learning more about your connections career. their current role and, you know, the outlook on the industry in question. So generally speaking, people are keen and happy to spend time talking to you about their career, and most people like talking about themselves. So it's a great way to start building a relationship and building your networking strategy. The final thing that I want to talk about before we open it up to questions is following up. So one of the really important steps of networking is following up with a new contact after your first meeting or interaction with them. Following up helps to solidify your relationship, and it gives you an opportunity to ask further questions or arrange for a meeting. Ideally, you should follow up within 24 hours of when the interaction took place, because it's still really fresh in the other person's mind. And so you should include some information that I'll share with you now. So you're going to want to mention the event where you met, or you know, the interaction. So this helps personalize your request. And then bring in some personal information from that conversation. So again, this just helps jog their memory. And then offer to help. So is there a way that you can help the contact? Perhaps you were going to connect them with someone, or you were going to forward an article that you were discussing. Those are sort of ways that you could offer to help or continue the conversation. And then you would ask to meet up in the follow-up, or you would ask to continue the conversation if that's what you were doing. And then, you know, connect on LinkedIn if you met at a face-to-face event. So that's, again, helping to strengthen the relationship. And always edit or review your follow-up message. So no matter what method you use to follow up, make sure that you've reviewed it a few times to just make sure that there's no errors and that you leave the person with a strong professional message. And I can definitely say that following up, whether it's in networking or interviews, any of those things is really a lost art, I think, especially from an HR perspective. So following up will help you stand out. It's so easy. It doesn't take much effort at all. So I definitely encourage everybody to start doing that if they haven't already. So using those principles, this is an example of how you might follow up by email after meeting someone at an event. So it is short and simple and clearly marked for areas of personalization. And then the personalized version is, you know, including where you met, what you talked about, and asking to meet for a follow-up. So this is the end of my part of the presentation. We've always found that there's lots of questions, so we wanted to make sure there's lots of time today to answer any questions from the audience. We're also going to be providing you with some resources. So the Identify Your Network worksheet, networking goals document, the elevator pitch worksheet, and then some sample questions for an informational interview. All right, then I'll hand it over to Tara.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Okay, we're going to get started with the questions, and we'll do our best to answer them live. I also have a summary of all the things that you have suggested you might do this week to start your networking, so I'll share that shortly. Someone asked, what about the outfit? Apparently here in Vancouver, the dress code is not even casual.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in Vancouver, and I can speak to sort of that, the attire there, and then going to, we're in Calgary, it's a lot different, but I always say it's better to overdress than underdress. So you should always be, and one piece of advice I've heard before too is to dress to the job that you want. So if you don't have to wear a suit to your regular job, but you want a job in a place where you need to wear a suit, or you expect to wear a suit, then show up networking like that, because that's what the peers would be wearing. So I always think it's better to be more professional than it would be to show up in like jeans and a t-shirt.
Great. What kind of information should be on a business card if you're not working a permanent full-time position? So no title, company, association. Should you write that you're a graduate of X program? Question mark.
Yeah, definitely. Like, for instance, if I wasn't working right now and I was going to network and I was trying to find a job, I would just say my name, and I would say HR professional. I might list any designation I have, so my CPHR, and then my contact information. That's all you really need.
Sarah, have you ever seen, I'm adding to this question, have you ever seen people to use the back of the business card to highlight some of their key skills?
No, I haven't seen that.
Would you recommend that?
I think if you can present it in a interesting way and it makes sense, why wouldn't you? I think that would, it wouldn't hurt you, I would say. But if you're just sort of like putting as much as you can on that little business card, I wouldn't encourage that.
Right. Great. What should we not include in an elevator pitch?
I think so. The desperation points that we were trying to get at with our example of the bad one. So, like, what are you going to do for me? How do I, do you have a job? It's more sort of saying who you are, what you bring to the table, and then what that next step is. So it's more your selling statement about who you are as opposed to like asking somebody for something.
And obviously sticking away from any of the obvious demographics that we try not to bring up in any sort of interview or engagement. I would assume that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be overly personal too. You want to keep it professional and just stick to your professional skills and education and experience, and that's about it.
Great. So this person said, in terms of the elevator pitch, I agree number 2 is much better. However, would it be beneficial to mention that you had applied for a job at their company, just like they did in number 1?
Yes and no. So I think it depends. I think if you phrase it in such a way of like, I'm aware of your company and I really admire what they're doing, and actually I've applied for jobs before, that's where I would leave it. You wouldn't say, I've applied for a job there and nobody ever got back to me, or hey, can you look into this, or whatever. Like, you just have to be mindful of how you're coming across. So that's all. That's why in our sort of instructions or our direction, we're just trying to keep it to the point as to who you are and your skill set.
I kind of get the impression, Sarah, that through the elevator pitch, you kind of want to showcase who you are and then walk away and kind of leave them wanting more, like, ooh, I want to look into who that person is. Or like, oh, I wonder, it sounds like they've applied for a job. I'm going to look into them. So you really want to leave it in their court to want to look into you, because you impressed them so much with who you were and what you had to offer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With follow-ups, what is the most common medium for this? Email or directly through LinkedIn?
I think like I would have said email a while ago, but now it seems to be LinkedIn, because a lot of times people can just search somebody's name and find them that way, and you're wanting to connect with them, whereas email, you're not really connecting the same way that you do through LinkedIn and social media. So I've been seeing a lot more on LinkedIn, but also too, not everybody likes to use LinkedIn. So sometimes you could follow up, you could do both. So you could send the email if you actually have something that you want to, like, that you discuss with that person. So you were going to share an article, you were going to connect them with somebody else. I would send that in an email, because I think most people are using that. Whereas LinkedIn, sometimes people don't use it, checking their messages or their connection requests or that kind of thing. So it could get lost if you have an actual like follow up with that person. If you just met them and you chatted and you want to connect and grow your network that way, then I think LinkedIn would be fine. But if it's a little bit more formal, then I would go with the email.
Great. what should you do if you have a contact that you want to get in touch with, but you don't remember how or where you met?
Well, this is another reason why we want everybody to use those tracking spreadsheets, because they come into play later on. But I think if you don't know how you met them, I think you could probably say, like, I've attended these types of events, and your name sounds really familiar, or your face looks very familiar, or I'm in this networking group or whatever. Like, throw a few options out there and be like, did I meet you there? Or did we chat there? And then it's kind of like, they might be feeling the same way too. Like, how many times have you met somebody that you're like, I know I've talked to this person before, but I can't remember what? You're kind of giving them a casual, release that they can be forgetful too. So that's how I would position it, with like, have a couple options where you possibly could have met them, or who you know them through, and just play it that way.
That works really well with the in-person. It's a little bit more difficult to translate that into an email or LinkedIn, but would you still recommend trying to throw it at those couple places, even if it's in written form?
I think maybe if you can't remember them, and you're doing it through LinkedIn, and you can see something on their profile, maybe use that instead as your introduction. So, oh, I see that you're also a member of whatever networking group, or, oh, I see that you also follow this leader of something that you admired. Like, use that, just find something that exists there, and maybe down the road you'll be like, oh yeah, I did actually meet you at that conference, or, oh yeah, you were in this conversation at that time. But maybe just use it on the information that you do know for the LinkedIn or that kind of networking.
Great. What is the best way to shake nerves before going to a networking event, either online or in person? It's a great question.
Yeah, and I think everybody has, their own personal strategy. A couple of mine are remembering that everybody's sort of in the same position. So it's an equal playing field in a lot of ways when you're all in these big conference rooms and everybody's like kind of only knows one or two people. And so try to remember the intention for being there. And so I find that helps me sort of stay on track and just kind of get through that. And then preparation. So everybody always feels better when you're prepared. So if you're going to conferences or you're attending these webinars, I've taken part in a few different things online recently. The information is there for you to research. So you know who the speakers are, you know who's sponsoring an event. You can get this information just by, spending an hour researching that. And I find that if you come a little bit more prepared with what you're going to ask, or maybe how you'll answer something, then it can help keep the nerves down a little bit. It's normal to be nervous. So and so I just think that being prepared can really help that.
Great. I love the idea of preparation. And I would say that for me was something that I was going to recommend, is that if you've got those short-term goals going into the event and you've got your plan, you can take confidence in that. Like, you've kind of got in your head, like, I'm going to try to talk to this person, or I'm going to try to understand this organization better. And then it will help you kind of let go of the fact that it feels awkward and you don't know anybody else, because you know why you're there and you know why you're participating. So that was, I liked your advice. Networking during the pandemic is a challenge sometimes. What resources could you share to help finding networking workshops?
Well, I think a lot of it is, there's a lot on LinkedIn, and with the more connections you have, the more people are sharing different opportunities. I think, there's websites like PLT or our website, Eco Canada, that have different events or that kind of thing that people are talking about. So just subscribing to different newsletters, or being a part of more groups on social media things like LinkedIn, you'll become more aware of different opportunities. And especially now that we're, I don't even know how many months into this pandemic anymore, but like everybody has shifted online. So there's only going to be more opportunity to do this online and more visibility. So I think just making sure that you're staying on top of the newsletters and different advertising methods that different organizations are using, which is primarily going to be LinkedIn. So that's what I would encourage.
Yeah, and I think that the cool thing about the pandemic is because organizations can't do things in person, everything is more accessible because you don't have to travel. People who were gonna, or organizations that might have hosted really expensive conferences are now relatively inexpensive. So for example, if you're an educator, the North American Association for Environmental Education, it's a conference that happens all over North America, and it generally has 3,000 people attending and all this amazing information and great networking opportunity. And it's normally hundreds and hundreds of dollars to attend. And now it's like 25. And
Wow.
so there are a lot of more accessible opportunities for networking. So I think following Sarah's advice and just what are the organizations out there that are doing things that are connected to your interests, and just making sure you're kind of keeping a pulse on them. So.
Mm-hmm.
If your networking connection occurred a few years ago, is it worth trying to reach out to the person again? Is there a cutoff time wise where you just should let things go and not try to reconnect?
Again, I think I would ask, just get everybody to use their best judgment. But I think if you've tried repeatedly to connect with somebody and you're not getting a response, then, you should leave that ball in their court. Is there a magic rule to like what cutoff time that is? No, but I would say if you've tried on email and you've tried on LinkedIn and you're not getting anywhere, then don't keep going. But if something's happened years ago and you can still bring back that information or connect with them, I would definitely encourage that. There's lots of people that are coming back into my professional life now that I'm, because my career has gone different places. And so working in nonprofit and then for-profit and now back in nonprofit, the people that come back into your life are it's great to connect with them again. So I definitely encourage that. I don't think that there's, it's not black and white with an answer to that. It's just using your best judgment. And if you can bring forward, even like, for instance, you've maybe went to a conference years ago and you saw somebody speak or a lecture or whatever that may be, and then you've gone to something else and they've been an attendee, you could reach out to them and say, hey, like I noticed you're attending this event. I saw you speak at this event. Great to see you around again. Stuff like that is totally fine.
Great. Is it possible to be a bit more specific on offering help after a networking event or conversation? So I think this person's maybe just looking for more specific things to do.
Okay. I mean, I think if you were in a conversation where you were talking about, industry trends, and you've read a really interesting article, you could, even if you hadn't introduced it to the person that you're talking to, you could, for instance, follow up and say, we were chatting about this. I just came across this article. It's super interesting. If you've got a second, you should check it out. Or if you notice that somebody, needed help connecting with a certain resource or a certain person, you could put them in touch with that person. It's really, it could be anything. I mean, even if it was not professional related, like say you got off topic and started talking about an app that you're using that you found really useful, and you could send them a link to the same app or anything like that. So again, it's just sort of using your imagination, but it has to connect to the conversation. And if you don't have an offer for help, that's okay too. You don't have to have that all the time.
Is it enough, Sarah, to just reach out and appreciate the conversation? Like, we spent 15 minutes chatting, you shared some information about the sector, and I really appreciated that conversation, and I just wanted to let you know.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely, that's an easy way to follow up.
Yeah. Is it rude to reach out to a person again if they haven't responded to your personalized invite on LinkedIn?
I don't think it's rude. I think if you're only going off of LinkedIn and you know this person, or like you should be able to recall the conversation and that kind of thing, you could try like email. I don't think that's you know, a faux pas, because again, everybody sort of interacts with different mediums differently, and not everybody loves LinkedIn. You know, I think the conversation in the webinar last time around was, people were like, do I really have to be present on LinkedIn, right? So I don't think it's rude, but if you sent an email and they're not responding, and you don't have anything that you were following up on, then I wouldn't push it, right? I don't think that you necessarily need to do that.
Great. Due to COVID, the people are hesitant to meet in person. Is it okay to ask for a Zoom meeting from a new connection, or how can you suggest moving forward?
I've had a lot of people who have reached out, or I've reached out to them for just like a phone call. I think, again, now video call is getting a lot more frequent and people are more comfortable with it. But I think if you're unsure of the person's comfort level, just a phone call. And you can do just audio on these calls. You don't have to have your camera on. So that's what I would do, or put it as an option to the person, because some people really like to have the face-to-face. So you know, hey, could we do a quick conversation on Zoom, either just, you know, audio or the phone or whatever. And maybe it depends on your comfort level too. So that's what I would suggest, is doing the audio call.
Great. Should you use trackers while at the event or afterwards?
I guess that depends on your own ability to retain the information for, you know, the hour after. So that's your call. I mean, if you're going to, say, bring a notepad, you could track it if you wanted. I know, like, for me, sometimes what I'll do instead is take a picture of the business card on my phone, and then you can just like add notes to the actual card. And then when you get home, you can then put it in your tracker. Or if you're not with your phone, you could write it down on the back of their business card. Or if you don't have a business card, you could use a little small notepad, that kind of thing, if you are worried about losing that information between the event and going home. So it's really up to you. I wouldn't walk around like with your book out and as if it was some sort of scavenger hunt or anything like that, but it's all in how you can best retain that information.
This person says, I'm interested in understanding better how finding jobs through networks work. In what kinds of situations would that be the case? Example, a person is searching for a candidate and remembers someone from previous interaction, or rather a person meets someone that's fitting and decides it would be great to have them on their team, although they're not really actively looking for candidates. Yeah, that's a great question, because your stat of 85% comes through networking. So I think this person wants to understand those connections better. That's great.
Sure, so I'll give some examples of like real examples. For me, in my position, I'll post a job and then somebody will have seen it somewhere and they'll apply. And then somebody I know will reach out to me and say, Joe Smith has applied for your job. I can vouch for this guy. He's great. And so where my contact knows Joe from could be a previous job, it could be a family friend, it could be whatever. But that's how the sort of informal networking has come into play in my particular, you know, situations lately with the jobs we're posting for. I know other people who have worked with somebody and then that person leaves the organization, and then there's an opportunity at their new organization and they know of somebody else that they've worked with before, so they'll call upon that person and encourage them to apply. So it's not as if you're like overstepping the application process, but it's just more so that it's another way for you to connect and be more than just a name on paper.
Great.
Somebody raised their hand too, I just saw.
Oh. Hannah, do you want to unmute that person who raised their hand?
Oh, it's their mistake.
Okay. Does it look bad to have graduated and been hired for 3 months at a job not related to your field? Should this be communicated in the resume or email?
Yeah, and I think we've chatted about that too. I think in the first webinar that we did. But yeah, if you have something that's not as like a direct relation to what you're looking for, the cover letter or the email that you send along with your resume is a perfect opportunity to kind of address that. Because if you don't address that, the person reading it or receiving it doesn't know, right? So I would always use the cover letter or the email, the body of the email to just mention that, and then show that there are transferable skills, or explain, you know, this was a break, I went traveling, or whatever it may look like, but just use that to make sure everything's clear.
Great. If you are asked a controversial question at a conference or a networking event, and you know your opinion is different from the person who asked it, what's the best way to reply? For example, if you're talking to a government official and they ask about a recent environmental decision that was made, which you disagree with.
I guess it depends on what you're hoping to get from it. I mean, I think everybody has the right to their own opinion, and you can respectfully disagree without launching into, you know, anything personal or like somebody could perceive as, you know, an attack of any kind. But if you're looking to build upon a relationship or get something like a job eventually down the road, I don't think you have to agree with somebody, but you can, you know, politely redirect the conversation, or just say the facts. Oh, yeah, I saw that in the news. I need to find out more about that, or I need to read more about that, and just kind of find a way to redirect the conversation if you feel that strongly about something.
Great. Students, I'm going to skip this one because it's more related to job references, so I'll answer that directly. A lot of organizations ask for academic references. Is it awkward to ask a professor you haven't spoken to in years for a reference?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think if you really need it for whatever you're applying for, then you would. And actually, I have an example of this came through recently to ECO. We had an employee that was applying for like a master's or something that needed our like 2 presidents back to have a reference done, and so they gave a huge paragraph as to who they were, when they knew this person, what they did together. So and then asked for the reference or whatever it was that they needed. So I think you could do the same with a professor. You could say, you took this course at this time, you wrote this paper, or, you know, whatever that relationship was, and just say why you're looking to get this reference from them at this time and how much you would appreciate it, and that kind of thing. But as long as you sort of bring some context into how you know them, then they'll tell you if they're comfortable with that or not.
Great. Is there an app for the tracker?
That's a good question. I don't have an app for something like that, but I'm sure there's an app for everything. So there's probably something out there that you could use, or even if you made something in Google Drive in the Sheets or whatever that is called, you could use that on your phone too. So I don't know about an exact app that I could recommend, but I'm sure searching would help, or you could just use, you know, the different spreadsheets and different things that everybody has already on their phone, and just customize it to your own needs.
Okay, we have one final question. How do you follow up after an informational interview when the organization may be hiring, or even when they're not?
I think what I would do is I would follow up and say thanks for their time, and say that you noticed that this was posted and you're interested in applying. You know, could I send my resume to you to take a look over, or do you know who I should get in contact with? and then leave, you know, in their court to either say, yeah, I'll pass this on for you, or yeah, I can help coach you on what to expect. Like those are all things that they would probably respond back. So that's what I would do in that case. And then the second part of that was if they're not hiring, is that what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I think what I would just do is say I really enjoy learning more, and I hope, you know, if an opportunity presents itself, would it be okay if I reached out to you for more information or more help or that kind of thing on with the resume or the application? That's what I would do, and then just make sure that you do follow up when the time comes that the company is hiring.
Great. Okay, thanks, Sarah, for so many great answers. That's lots of questions, and you were correct. You allocated much greater time for questions because we always get held up by questions. So I'll just ask Hannah to advance the slide to the contacts. So if you have any questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Maria. And if the question is specifically for Sarah, feel free to include that as well, and we can direct that to her. Or, as you've heard, you can seek her out on LinkedIn. It's one of her favorite places to hang out, I think. And we do really appreciate you coming here today and spending the time with us. I hope that you're able to do some takeaways, and you've got some short-term goals that connected to your long-term goals. I will just remind you that for attending all 4 webinars, and I know there are lots of candidates out there, you will receive the joint certificate between Project Learning Tree and Eco Canada. And one of the questions in the Q&A was, can I connect that to my LinkedIn profile? Absolutely, you can and you should. In fact, I have just read a whole bunch of resumes coming in for some Project Learning Tree Canada jobs, and people are referencing this webinar, and that has made a difference in whether we pay more attention to the rest of the resume. So definitely do that. It's kind of making that network connection through your resume. So I do appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a really great evening and the rest of your week.
Awesome.
And join
Thanks,
us
everybody.
September 24th.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.